Welcome back to the Goal Line Stand. Andrew Spaziano and Tom Condi here in studio for part 2 of our Victory Formation segment, the state of the NFL, really our State of the Union address for the league. Looking at all the issues around the league, each team in both conferences, taking a bit of a different approach for each conference, and fine-tuning their struggles and what they need to do to improve or to stay at the level they're at going into next season.
Hope you guys enjoy this. We try and go down all the teams, all 32. So listen on and please enjoy.
So without further ado, here is the state of the NFL. Start off with the AFC. This is one I brought to the table, being a fan of an AFC team, the New England Patriots. And
American Football Conference, for those who don't know what AFC stands for.
Yeah. That's originated from the American Football League, which was the...
Predates the 1960 merger.
Yeah. 1970 merger. They were founded in 60 and then merged in 70. But they're the only pro football team that was able to compete with the NFL and then have all their teams merge with the league. Other leagues were able to merge with the NFL, but like the Cleveland Browns played, I think, the World Football League or World Football Conference. And they kicked ass there, and they're like, hey, you guys are good. Your league's dying. Want to join us? And they're like, absolutely. But the AFL was the only one that got all their teams to fold in. It's a fun fact. But talking about the conference today, especially from the perspective of a Patriots fan, look, what the Patriots have done in the last 7 years, they've been to 7 straight conference championships. That's phenomenal. And I think that's a credit to the organization for the fact that they're consistently good and they're always at the top. I think there's a legitimate flip side to this, and I think a lot of people in New England don't want to think about it because they just want to talk about how good the team is. And that's all well and good, but the whole side of this story is the fact that the conference is not that good, and I don't think the conference has been that great for the past few years. This year, I think it kind of came to like the pinnacle. I really felt like in the AFC this year, there was only 3 good teams. Patriots, Steelers, and the Jaguars were good. The Jaguars had a dominating defense, and they were able to compete, and they were able to beat the Steelers and get to the AFC Championship game. So I think those are the 3 frontrunners. After that, I mean, it really gets confusing. I think that as a whole, I think the AFC playoffs were full of 3 good teams and 3 okay teams. And I think the teams were on the bubble were okay teams. I just think the conference for a variety of ways has been mismanaged. I think there's been a lot of disappointing teams that have come and gone and haven't been able to have the staying power that not only the Patriots have had, but the Steelers have been a competitive team. They haven't necessarily been a front runner in a conference, but they've been competitive for the last 10 or so years at the very least. They've been in the conversation. Those are really the only 2 teams that have lasted, the Patriots and Steelers, that have lasted this long. The rest of the conference, and it's hard to stay constantly competitive over a decade plus in the NFL, but you know, I look at the NFC and I see a lot of promising teams. In the AFC, I just don't see it. It's just a very, I don't know. I'm curious to see what you think about it.
You're correct. The AFC is a very top-heavy conference with Pittsburgh, New England being those top 2 teams, and then the other 4 talking about the playoff picture type, and then the other 4 being whoever decides to show up. It'll be interesting when the free agency and draft period come, but going down the line, you have the AFC East, which has been dominated by the New England Patriots. Buffalo, the Jets, and Miami, they are trying to play nice here.
Well, you know what's funny is, I know the AFC East, I'm not going to sit here and like defend how good it is, but they've had 2 playoff teams. They've had playoff teams the last 2 seasons.
They did. But
now, I don't know if that's a reflection of the skill in the division or the state of the conference.
I think one hand washes the other in that, because Buffalo snuck in. If it wasn't for Andy Dalton on 4th down, Baltimore would have been in at that 6th seed.
And Baltimore was a better team. They weren't a great team, but they definitely were a more complete team than the Bills.
And to bring it to the AFC North, that's a fun division minus Cleveland, because you have Pittsburgh, who's been reigning supreme. Baltimore is always been a fun team for me because I am a fan of Joe Flacco. I think once he gets into the playoffs, he's a whole other quarterback. But that defense historically has been just so fun to watch. They've been dominant.
See, I kind of want to turn the clock back 3 years. So 3 years ago in the 2014 season, there was a lot more competition in the AFC, especially in that division. The Ravens were coming off of a Super Bowl a couple years before. They were still a consistent competitor in the conference, and they've had issues the last few years just getting into the playoffs. They've just had some down years. I think part of that is the Flacco contract has hindered their ability to get free agents just because it's such a big part of their cap. They've had issues with cap in the past couple years. They had Elvis Dumervil eating a lot of money. They had Steve Smith eating a lot of money. So they were kind of in cap hell. They had a lot of issues getting out of that hole. The Bengals, on the other hand, the Bengals honestly were probably a top 2-3 team over a period of time in the conference. They were constantly in the playoffs, but they couldn't win in the playoffs. That was the thing. And I don't think it was lack of skill. I think it was the fact that I think after a while they psyched themselves out of it. I don't think they could they just were not mentally prepared for the playoffs because they'd been so snake bitten. But if you look at those two organizations the last few years, I mean, I think Cincinnati's been a lot more dramatic in their decline. I mean, they were a sub 500 team last year, and they were roughly 500 this year. So they've really taken a decline more so than I think Baltimore. But I think those are two teams in the AFC that I think, especially in that division, that's a fun division. It's usually a competitive division. I just feel like Pittsburgh has owned that division the last few years because those two teams in particular have fallen off.
Every year I semi-expect two teams to come out of that division just because it's such a hard-hitting, smart offense division. I mean, you got Pittsburgh versus Baltimore. Those matchups are fun to watch. Cincinnati versus Pittsburgh are just violent games. And then you can also go Cincinnati, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Cleveland. Cincinnati and Cleveland, believe it or not, they have a long history together.
They do. It's a very interesting history.
If you guys ever have 10 minutes to read a small article, read up on how Cincinnati and Cleveland are connected. But just that whole division, I generally see two teams coming out of there. To continue down, I see the AFC West. That's a fun division. You got Denver, you got Oakland, you got San Diego. Well, actually, they're
Los Angeles,
LA now. Sorry, and you have you just messed my run up. Kansas City. So that's always a fun division.
And Denver's a team. Denver was easily the number 2 team in the conference for several years. Denver was New England's. New England has cycled through challengers in the conference. I think early on it was Pittsburgh, like the first year, the first Super Bowl run, and they had some competitive games. Then the Colts, absolutely, for 5 or 6 years. Then it was the Ravens, and the Steelers mixed in here and there. But overall, and then the Broncos. The Broncos had one of the best defenses in the history of the league for several years, and they had a aging quarterback who is one of the best to ever play the game, Peyton Manning. And it was really the Manning-Patriots rivalry more than those organizations when you come down to it. Denver has a lot of intriguing pieces, and I think the criticism has to fall on John Elway. John Elway has not been able to land a quarterback. I think something that blows my mind is they drafted Paxton Lynch in the first round.
Yep, they traded up for him.
And he hasn't been able to do anything. They put him in a couple of games this year, and he sucked. And it's like, I think part of that is you probably misevaluated the prospect, number one. Number two, have you put him in a position to develop? I don't think they have. I don't think they've put him in a system where he can grow as a passer and a quarterback.
Yeah, we don't see practices, so it's coming out of college. He had awesome physical statistics. His arm is a cannon. He's tall. I think he's like 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah.
He has the build of a Ben Roethlisberger with the arm strength of a Michael Vick, but it's the accuracy that kills him.
Yeah. They've wasted that talent on defense, and honestly, they've wasted the talent at wide receiver. They have probably one of the best wide receiver duos in the league. Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas. You got a big, tall, physically gifted receiver who's a burner, by the way. And Emmanuel Sanders is your your prototypical possession guy over the middle, but he can also,
He can blow over the top too.
yes, he can. Probably one of the best duos in the league at that position, and they've been wasted the last few years because they've been taking on water at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and then you got Oakland. Oakland's a fun team, but they
Underachieved this year.
yeah, and I expected them to get into the playoff picture and
They should have been.
challenge New England for the throne. Because let's get it correct. When you think of the AFC, you think of who's going to play New England in the championship.
Yeah, that's what it's come down to.
Yeah, and Oakland was supposed to be one of those teams. They had Carr. They had a really good offense. Their receivers actually are a good duo with Amari Cooper and
Crabtree.
Michael Crabtree.
But to your point, Cooper sucked this year. Cooper had a disgusting year. Crabtree was all right when he wasn't getting in the fights with Aqib Talib, which is the best WWE match in football right now.
And to go on, Lynch wasn't really beast mode until probably the last 2 months of the season.
It was definitely a combination with him of him physically being able to play and also his usage.
Yeah, and that defense is
patchwork.
okay,
I mean, Khalil Mack is an all-pro talent. After that, I mean, you got a couple guys over there that catch your eye, but it's definitely not overwhelming. I just don't know what they're doing on the back end of things. Their secondary is very patchwork, and you can get away with that if you can get to the quarterback. But if you're all you have is your all-pro pass rusher and everybody else isn't chipping in there, then that's easy. You double team the all-pro, and then you call their bluff.
Yeah, they definitely underperformed this year, and free agency will be interesting because I don't know how much money they have, but there's been rumors that they're eyeing on the Le'Veon Bell situation.
Well, you got to think if they let Lynch go, I'm not sure how much he was making, but you're obviously going to get that contract off the books. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head their cap situation, but I think with John Gruden there, I think they want to make moves. I think they want to generate some excitement. But if we're going to talk about chronic underperformers, the freaking Chargers, man.
Yeah.
Talk about one of them. They have such a talented team. Keenan Allen is a top 10 receiver in the league.
Yeah, they're just a funky organization.
They just know how to lose. It sounds crass to say that, but they lose so many games close. They lost 2 games early in the season because they didn't have a kicker. The kicker sucked. They let
and he got hurt actually. He got hurt this year. Their kicker.
Oh, well, they let Koo go, and then they picked somebody else up, and it was just a revolving door. They let Josh Lambo go to Jacksonville, and he kicked perfectly fine. And it's just stupid stuff like that. I mean, if you look at that team top to bottom, they should be, with the state of their division right now, they should be at least a wild card team, if not division front runner.
A contender. Yeah, a playoff contender.
And they just underachieved. They've done it for at least the last 2 years, if not 3 years. They've just found ways to lose football games that they should win, or they're in and they can't close the deal. And it's frustrating. I feel for Phillip Rivers because I think Phillip Rivers is a chronically overlooked quarterback because I think he's talented. I think he's made do with he's had good weapons around him. He had LT for a while, Vincent Jackson, Antonio Gates. Now he's got Keenan Allen over there, and he makes it work. And he's got a nice young tight end, Hunter Henry. That defense has one of the best pass rushing duos in the league in Melvin Ingram and Joey Bosa.
Oh, yeah.
And they have young talent on both sides of the ball, and it's just frustrating for me that that's a team that, if they get into the playoffs even as a wild card, I mean, that's a good team. That's a team you want to see in the playoffs because they have the talent.
Yeah, they're one team who just can't take one step followed by another step forward by another. It's crazy because they started out slow this year, and then people were worried if they get into the playoffs, teams don't want to play them.
I didn't want to see.
They don't want to play Ingram and Bosa and Phillip Rivers throwing the ball like crazy to Keenan Allen. And
they played the Patriots tough. I think they lost to them 21-13, and they were a couple of plays from, again, being tied in that game or winning that game. I mean, and that's just the story of that organization, is that they just find ways to squander games, squander leads, not able to perform in the last 2 minutes, and it's just frustrating because there's talent there, and Phillip Rivers has a closing window. He's getting to the point where he's probably got 2, 3 years, 4 years left, where he's going to be able to play at the level he is if he's lucky. And it's frustrating.
Nobody knows Nobody knows frustrating moments or team talent more so than the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and you can't overlook the fact that they're going Patrick Mahomes. They traded Alex Smith. I thought it was a good trade for the Chiefs.
Oh yeah, they definitely won a third round. They get a third round
absolutely.
pick, and they get 22-year-old Kendall Fuller.
Yeah, and I like that they made a trade for a cornerback because that was an issue they had. They didn't have a guy to put opposite of Marcus Peters. Now they got a young guy out there, and they could put him on a field, match him up opposite of Peters. I mean, I thought that was a really good trade for them, and we'll definitely get into the Redskins side of things when we talk about the NFC. But I think the Chiefs, I mean, you said this on the podcast several weeks ago that they didn't trade up and pick Patrick Mahomes at 10th for him to sit on the bench. He was their guy, is their future, and they did a good job of maximizing their asset in Alex Smith. He's making $19-20 million this year. They're not going to pay him that when you have Mahomes on the bench. Free that money up and improve your team, especially that defense. That defense needs some work. So I thought that was a really smart move. You get the draft pick and a corner. I mean,
who's still on a rookie deal now?
Yeah, and so you get him at a bargain. You get the extra pick that you can use or trade down, whatever you want to do with it. So yeah, I really like that move for them. I think that makes them a better team. I don't think I've ever heard of a trade being made. And granted, it's not official until the league year starts on March 14th. But I've never heard of teams like making a trade in football like the week leading up to the Super Bowl, like agreeing in principle to something like this. Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is a little different.
It's unconventional.
But we have seen in the past, since this new CBA was agreed upon, where before the start of the new year, that teams are allowed to sign people and do these moves, but nothing comes official until the set of the new NFL year. But I was surprised when I was informed that Alex Smith was traded to Washington, and I feel that Kansas City definitely won in the trade because you get a young corner, plug him in. He can be a plug-in starter. You get that third-round pick. But frustrating for this organization. When you had a lead against Tennessee in the playoffs.
And there's no question that they were the better team than Tennessee. I mean, if you look at the roster, I don't really think it's much of a discussion. The Titans have talent, but definitely in most years where the conference is more competent, are they a playoff team?
But that playoff game, I think, was the boiling point for the Kansas City Chiefs. If they had reached the Super Bowl, maybe they hold off for a year, but they didn't. They lost awfully to the Tennessee Titans, and that was the nail that sealed the coffin for them.
Yeah, I would agree. So they're definitely trending. They're trending in a younger direction there. Talking about young, I mean, the AFC South's got a lot of interesting young players there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Deshaun Watson, he's a guy that, I always get concerned when guys come off ACLs, especially a guy like him who likes to move around. It's always tough. You always have that grace year coming off of it.
That was no contact, was it?
Yeah, and those are nasty,
suck.
man.
Yeah, those are the worst to hear about. I mean, it's one thing to get cracked and all of a sudden, oh, man, I don't think he's going to get up.
Yeah, like Carson Wentz.
Yeah, that's one thing, but those non-contact injuries, oof, those are the ones that are scary.
Yeah, it was disappointing. He was such an exciting player and a dynamic player that was really he was building something down there. He was giving DeAndre Hopkins meaningful targets, and by meaningful I mean like he was giving him accurate targets that he can make a play on. He was feeding him. It just felt like that team had a special energy around them with him quarterbacking.
That team is not short on talent. You just named one with DeAndre Hopkins. I personally like Lamar Miller. I know he's been kind of frustrating as a fantasy performer, but we're talking about real football, and as a real football player, I do like Lamar Miller. I
think Lamar isn't necessarily utilized the way he should be down there. I think he disappears for stretches there. I think schematically they like to feed him the ball early, and then he kind of goes away for a little bit, and that's coaching. That's not him. So I agree with you. I don't blame him as a physical player.
And that's just the offensive side, let alone that defensive side, which everybody knows about the Houston Texans defense with J.J. Watt, Clowney. It's just Phew, talk about the two pass rushes up in San Diego, LA, wherever they want to be called. But Houston has some serious
Yeah.
when JJ stays healthy, though. And that's the big key.
No, absolutely. And they lost Merciless this year. I mean, Clowney, I wasn't a big guy on Clowney when he came into the league, but you know what? He's really talented. He's a beast. And
I'm sorry to cut you off, but not all defensive ends, pass rusher, outside linebacker, usually it takes them a couple years to transition into the NFL. Not everyone is like Joey Bosa, where comes in his first year, rookie year, and is lighting up the stat column. That doesn't happen all the time. Not even J.J. Watt did that.
no, definitely. I mean, they're a team I think that could. They have the talent to compete. I think they got to shore up the secondary a little bit, and you know they got to see where Watson's at. But I think they're an interesting up and coming team. The Jaguars, obviously, we know about their run this year. The interesting thing is they're gonna hang on to Bortles, and an interesting caveat to this is he just had wrist surgery, and something that was pointed out to me is that his fifth-year option is guaranteed for injury. So is he like, my wrist is screwed up? You can't cut me, buddy, because I'm going to get paid because my wrist is messed up. I don't know. That could be thinking from him, but regardless, they're sticking with him, which I think is an interesting.
I personally like the move. As much flack as Bortles gets, he showed a side of him this playoff that he's not afraid to lay his body on the line to get the job done. He played a damn near perfect game against New England, but it fell short. You get that some more talent, maybe invest in a wide receiver, some more offensive linemen, because that defense is already stacked. We know about that defensive side. I don't know about their cap situation.
They're very pressed against the cap. Schefter tweeted something this morning. It was in context of quarterbacks and quarterback needy teams, which I don't know if they're keeping Bortles, they're not necessarily quarterback needy. But with the projected cap of 176 mil, which could go up, they have 10 million in room. They don't have a lot of wiggle room. So and they're going to have to make decisions. They have so much money tied up on the defense. You can't keep everybody. That's the nature of the game. So they have to make decisions there. I'm interested to see how that goes with them, but they have talent, so they have the ability to make it happen.
Yeah, me personally, last comment on the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'd keep with Bortles, and you know what? Go with your strength. You have a dominant defense. You have a really good running back in Leonard Fournette. Invest in Allen Robinson on the outside. He's due up for a contract. Give Blake Bortles another big weapon on the outside, and go from there, because that's what your team is made of, is a really good defense and a strong run game.
Yeah, and the last two teams in the division before we get to the NFC, I don't have a ton to say. I mean, I think the Colts generally are a mess. I think their defense is poor. I mean, I think Malik Hooker is an interesting prospect, but he's struggled with injuries, and he ended up on IR with an injury to go out the year. Everybody's talking about Andrew Luck, and they're saying, well, he's going to be throwing again soon. My whole thing with Andrew Luck is, anytime you get something with your shoulder where you get work done, yeah, you can throw the ball, but you have the same zip. I mean, I always think of Chad Pennington. Chad Pennington was a good quarterback, but he had so much work done on his shoulder that the dude couldn't put the zip on the ball like he used to. And somebody like Andrew Luck, who has elite arm strength, is he going to be able to make the throws he could make? So with him aside, though, I mean, I just don't think they have a great roster. I think if Josh McDaniels goes there like he's supposed to, he has his work cut out for him and the general manager over there.
And look what McDaniels did to Denver.
Yeah,
Woo!
I know you're not a big McDaniels fan. And I mean, it's a warranted point. I mean, people think just because he was under Belichick, we talked about coaching trees before, that he's going to be great. It's not a guarantee at all.
The Andrew Luck story is kind of sad for me because I do like Andrew Luck, and he's a very talented quarterback. It's just so unfortunate that he got injured, and he's having a hard time with the rehabilitation. So McDaniel's going over there, he could screw everything up.
He could screw it up. He could help. I mean,
you are correct with it being such a kind of mess.
Yeah, I think they're probably, if I'm honest, they probably got one of the worst rosters in football right now.
Yeah.
I mean, and to wrap it up with Tennessee, I mean, I'm not thrilled with the Vrabel hiring. He hired the offensive coordinator that was with the Rams, and he's wicked young. He was an understudy to McVay, basically. I think they're basically trying to get McVay without getting McVay, and I think it's an interesting move. I can't criticize them going young when I talked about how people need to go young, but it's ballsy. I mean, you're taking a guy who's very raw at that role and are trying to plug him in. But I think he'll be interested for Mariota. I think the team we've talked about before, they need to get some more weapons on the outside to help Mariota get more targets. But, they're a team that probably overachieved when you look at what they have on their roster this year. Good for them. It's good to build off of. But, I mean, they have a lot of work to do, in my opinion.
During the playoff push, I was saying how Tennessee was the odd team out. They made it.
And they won a game.
But they are a team without much to cheer for. I don't know. It just the whole schematics and
they're
schemes.
Very in flux.
They're trying to make Mariota not Mariota. I feel it's. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. I really can't.
It's just this Rabel thing and what they're doing could be great, or it could blow up in their face, and it could set the franchise back 4 or 5 years. It just remains to be seen.
What was the stat line that you said? They had 3 coaches in 4 years or something.
Something like that. I mean, they had Wisenhunt for 23 games.
That's awful for Mariota.
Yeah,
that's awful.
Well, granted,
for
they
him.
drafted Mariota. I believe it was. I don't even know if it was during Wisenhunt's tenure. Maybe it was. I mean, I kind of forget how long he's been in the league.
His
third year. It was his. This was his past year's his third. So yeah, I think he probably was in that mess. To your point, so
yeah, I don't. And then you have the whole running back conundrum, Murray and Derrick Henry.
I could see them dumping or trying to trade Murray just because I think Henry is definitely their future there.
If that's the case, you need a third down back because Derrick Henry is not a third down back.
Absolutely.
You need someone to pass protect.
Sure.
And I agree. I mean, they spent a first-round pick on Corey Davis, try and snag another outside, but my thing with the AFC is need to bolster up that defense because you're going to be playing some good quarterbacks in Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, and those are your top 2 that you're looking up to because those are the 2 teams that have been there 1-2 for playoff seeding, and you just want to get in there. And when you get in there, you got to worry about those top echelon teams. So
absolutely.
That's my opinion on the state of the AFC.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, but I know you want to talk about the NFC, and we're going to start with the NFC East, Tom. I know you want to talk about the Cowboys.
The NFC East.
Well, I think before you get into it, I think we got to talk about Kirk Cousins because he's not going back to Washington. And I didn't really.
So what do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about Dallas? You want to talk about Washington?
Well, I think it affects the other. I think. How do you feel about Alex Smith in the NFC East?
As much as I feel about Kirk Cousins.
Really? I think Cousins is a better quarterback.
I do too, but Alex. Everyone saw what Alex Smith did this year in Kansas City with the weapons that they have over there. With
that's
Kareem Hunt, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, a solid offensive line, a really good defense. Now you're going to put Alex Smith on a team like Washington where what do they have? A defense that's paying Josh Norman, whoop-dee.
And their weapons aren't that great, to your point. I mean,
who?
Josh Doxson.
Who? You talking about Washington?
Yeah.
They have weapons?
I guess. I mean,
that's my point.
In a very gracious, generous way of saying it. I mean, they've got Josh Doxson and Jordan. I can't stay healthy. Reed. So I mean, it's
now. It's very weird because I think Kirk is a better pure passer than Alex.
I agree.
Alex needs weapons in order to be successful. Kirk was doing things with minimal talent as he can. I mean, I think he's 4th in Washington passing all time.
I believe it.
And now the big thing with Washington is I like Jordan Reed. He's very talented, but he can only play 6 games out of 16 out of 17-week season. And then they have no run game, right? Sam Perine, he was a flash this year, but he got hurt. I'm almost positive.
Yeah,
right?
they had a lot of injuries at running back.
Wide receiver, they spent good money on Terrell Pryor.
And that was a dud.
They were 7-9 this past year.
In my mind, Washington is the worst team in that division going forward, and that's saying with the Giants finishing 2-14, 3-13, whatever it was. I mean, I think even they have better upside than Washington just because of the regime change and everything there.
They have their needs, but they took care of one being quarterback. They solidified. Now walking forward that you have Alex Smith as your quarterback. If I'm the Washington Redskins, I would want to bolster up that defense. Grab a linebacker, grab a safety. They run a 3-4, so you got to think about the teams that they're playing over there with the New York Football Giants, the Dallas Cowboys, and the Philadelphia Eagles. They're high-powered offenses, so to combat that, you want a solid defense. Yeah, that's Washington for me.
Yeah.
I do agree with your assessment that they might be the worst in the division.
I can see them just taking a real big step back. I can see them having a top 5 draft pick after this year. Granted, this is all pre-free agency and everything, and I don't know, in draft. So
you have the Giants, 3-13 this year. What do you think?
I mean, I like the Shermer hire. I think he did a good job with Case Keenum over there. Just putting him in positions to succeed. I think they're going to basically just squeeze whatever's left of Eli out of him for the next 2 years. Whether that means they're going to take a quarterback in the first round, I don't know. I mean, a lot of people think they're going to take Saquon Barkley from Penn State because they need a running back. They haven't had running backs since Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. So
you're hitting all the words that are going to come out of my mouth because I know a lot of fans weren't happy with the Eli Manning benching. But it doesn't change the fact that the team needs to find his successor. They need to find someone to groom. And not only that, if you're going to win now, you need a running back and you need to invest in the offensive line.
Yeah.
They have a really good defense. So to help an aging quarterback, you need a running game because you're not going to win games Eli Manning throwing the ball 30 times. It's just not going to happen with an aging quarterback. But with that being said, I still think they can win now if they address the running back offensive line system for them.
Yeah, again, it's about putting Eli in a position to succeed. Having him throw the ball 30, 40 times a game isn't putting him in a position to succeed. They have talent at wide receiver. They've got Odell and Sterling Shepard going forward, and Evan Ingram's definitely a bright spot for him at tight end. But again, you need to be able to run the ball, and it's not even like you have to have a dominant run game that doesn't have to dominate your offense. But they can't run the ball. Period.
You need a respectable running game to help Eli.
Definitely, Tom. I'm gonna let you talk about the Cowboys.
You're gonna let me talk about the Dallas Cowboys, huh? All right. Well, they were 9-7 this year. Not what we all wanted, us as Dallas fans, but it is what it is, and you got to build upon the year. I like Dak Prescott.
Yeah,
you gotta build around him, and this term Dak friendly, I agree. You're gonna have Ezekiel Elliott back for this year without having any type of suspension. I knocked on wood for those who heard. Barring injury or suspension, whatever, you're gonna have Zeke come back. You're gonna have another off season of Dez and Dak to try and get that chemistry all together. Because I honestly don't see Dez going anywhere. It would be very naive to think that he's done.
They could use him to take a bit of a pay cut because he makes a lot of money, and frankly, I mean, I don't think he's been producing at the level where he gets paid. But again, I understand players look out for their own self-interest. Depends if you want to be a team player or not.
Yeah, to not take the whole New England mantra, but you kind of gotta take a pay cut to get a little bit more talent on your.
Yeah.
Because there's players on the New England roster that play undervalue and they understand the whole team aspect, but the offense was, needless to say, lacking talent or lacking execution when Zeke, Tyrone, and the offensive side. When Tyrone and Zeke were out, they just couldn't be the offense that we knew.
I think at the end of the day, they need a legit number 2 receiver. I don't think Terrence Williams cuts it. I mean, I've said before on the show, I think Cole Beasley is a cool guy to have in a slot, but I mean, that's what he is. He's a slot player. He's a pure slot player. Terrence Williams doesn't do it for me. I think you need to go out and get a legit number 2 wide receiver.
I agree with that. It's a pipe dream But I would love to get Jarvis Landry.
Yeah,
Love to get him. But that's just a pipe dream. To be more financially
realistic.
efficient, this free agent class has a lot of intriguing potential free agents like Sammy Watkins and Brown from Arizona. So you could get a wide receiver from that, or you could go inside the draft class. But wide receiver, that transition from the college level to the NFL level is it takes its time, especially for receivers. Not many Juju Smith-Schusters come out of college. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, definitely.
But as much as this offense was lacking firepower during the season, I would still invest in the defense. I will still chase after a defensive tackle or a linebacker if they fall in the draft. I still want to inject college talent through the draft for my defense, whereas my offense, I would rather gain some veteran experience with bringing in a free agent wide receiver. And that's just me, because the physicality of defense, I'd rather have a young gun come in, because you're going to have the maturation of Jalen Smith, of Sean Lee, and we don't know what's going to happen with Anthony Hitchens. He's a very smart football player, but he's due up for a contract, so you don't know what's going to happen with him. They're trying to lock down DeMarcus Lawrence. So still work on this defense. I'm still a firm believer that defense wins championships.
For me, I think my summary of the Cowboys from an outsider perspective, you're definitely, you're a fan. You're more in-depth with specific personnel and such. For me, I just feel like Dallas in 16 kind of overachieved what they were. I mean, they were a good football team, don't get me wrong, but they finished, I believe, 13-3, and I felt like they were kind of due to kind of average out this year. And for me, they were a playoff team. I thought they were going to be a wild card team, and they just missed out. So I think they have the ability to be a playoff team, and I think in that division it's tough because you got Philly, who's going to be playing in the Super Bowl and whatnot. So they reached that pinnacle. So you're going to have to deal with them. You just got to think about that kind of thing, that you have the talent to be at that level, but you still need to add pieces.
Yeah, and to close out the Dallas Cowboys, because I don't want to feed too much time on one team in this segment, but Dak might have hit that sophomore slump, that sophomore wall.
Definitely.
But you have to understand, it's easy to blame the quarterback. It is. You win, it's because of the quarterback. You lose, it's because of the quarterback.
Right.
But it just so happened that we had the perfect storm. The Dallas Cowboys had a perfect storm in the case that before Zeke got hurt, they were averaging about 30 points a game, a top 10 offense. They were averaging over 250, 300 yards on offense. They were just moving the ball. And not to deviate, but they had just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And they were the hottest team in the NFL, the Dallas Cowboys. And then Tyrone got hurt and Zeke got out. He was suspended. So all that pressure had to go on
Prescott.
Dak. And then the first game without Tyrone, the first game without Sean Lee on the defensive side, the first game without Zeke Elliott, Dak Prescott gets sacked 6 times.
Yeah.
Of course he's going to be a different quarterback going forward from that. He just got cracked the most times in one game than he had all previous games before that. So you don't think his mechanics are going to be a little screwy? You don't think he's going to be looking over his shoulder, worrying about getting hit, then reading his progressions and stuff like that? Too many people, especially Dallas faithful, were too quick to turn their back on Dak Prescott when he is the quarterback, but he can't do it all by himself. He's not a proven veteran who can shoulder that type of weight. He's still young. He still needs to mature. But going down for 2018, I think he'll be a better quarterback because of this year.
No, I agree. He's definitely year 3 is when you grow.
So the most successful team in this division, the NFC East, has to be the Philadelphia Eagles, finishing with 13-3. Even though they made it to the Super Bowl, they're not a team without their faults. The Eagles addressed their need at running back with the addition of Jay Ajayi, but I think with the season-ending injury to Jason Peters, I can see them going after some offensive linemen this year to help protect Carson Wentz.
No, definitely.
Their cornerback corps, that's a suspect as well. Maybe their first top 3 picks, round 1, round 2, round 3, probably invest in a corner, a tackle, see how that goes.
Yeah.
What do you think about the Eagles?
I mean, I think they just have decisions to make. I mean, we've talked about it before that they have a lot of guys on the cheap. I mean, Patrick Robinson's a guy who's making peanuts. He's going to be a free agent. You got to figure out what to do with him. I mean, Torrey Smith's making a lot of money. Do you keep that contract? I mean, there's always decisions you have to make, especially when you have a Super Bowl caliber team. You can't keep everybody. So I think you raised some good points. They need depth on the offensive line, I think. And it's really hard to kind of block for a guy with Wentz's ability to kind of move around and whatnot. But I think you just need to have depth there. I mean, as a Dallas fan, you can attest that depth is important, no matter how good your front 5 are, your starters. But I think that, and I mean, the secondary, those are the obvious candidates for me.
They have an aging front 7 because I know they, with the trades that they made in this offseason, and they got, Chris Long, right? They got Chris Long for 1-year deal.
Yeah, it was small. It wasn't anything big.
So I can also see them build upon the success that they have this year and maybe go out and get another cheap defensive end or defensive lineman that can help improve the pass rush when the season is over and they got to move forward. But the Eagles, they're really peculiar because they had the talent last year and they lost in overtime against Dallas, and then they went on this huge skid.
I thought Philly coming into this year, I thought they were going to be a team that was going to be up and coming. And for me, I mean, they blew expectations out of the water for me. I think they did it with most people. Nobody thought they'd be a Super Bowl caliber team. I mean, I thought they'd be like a up and coming team, possibly a fringe playoff team. I didn't think they'd be the freaking NFC representative in the Super Bowl. I think they did a good job. Howie Roseman did a good job crafting a team, adding to their needs, giving Wentz weapons, and now Nick Foles, who finished out the season for him. So they did a good job developing that and giving them talent, but it's really just about sustaining. It's about being able to do that not just this year, but 2-3 years into the future.
Especially now that they added the extension to Alshon Jeffrey's contract, I do believe that they are built for extended success as long as they turn their attention to their needs in this offseason. Because to reiterate, I'd like for them to bolster up that offensive line. I mean, Carson Wentz's injury is what it is, but help protect him, especially on that left tackle position, quarterback's blind side. And keep bolstering up that defense, because when you play in a division with Eli Manning, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, and that duo, and then you have Washington, which,
sucks,
is Washington. I'd like to see them initiate and take care of that left tackle position, because they are a team that's built to run the ball and be productive with behind Carson Wentz.
Absolutely.
Now to turn down to the South, you got the NFC South. I'll start out with the Tampa Bay Bucks. They finished out 5-11. Disappointing season.
They need a defense.
It's a tough division, but you are right. Especially in a division like that with Cam, Drew, and Matt Ryan, they do need a defense.
Look, they had the worst pass defense in the league. And like you're saying, if you're playing against that kind of quarterback play, I mean, you're not going to win many games in the division and really in the conference at large if you can't defend a pass.
Did they even have a pass rush? They had to have been the lowest sack total team.
I don't know if they ended the year, but they were like woefully bad rushing the passer. I remember when New England played them in Week 5, they had like 3 sacks.
Holy smoke, that's more than I thought they had the whole year.
maybe they doubled that for
Yeah,
the
I
whole
don't.
year. It was bad, man. I mean, but it comes down to if you don't have a good secondary, you could have a pass rush or vice versa, and they didn't have either.
Yeah, I don't watch much Tampa Bay Buccaneer football, but
Do many people?
the games I do, I know quite a few Buccaneer fans, but the games I did watch, it was that pass rush. That's the biggest weakness, I would think, and they were walking into this season with high hopes.
Well, I think I've said this before, but I mean, look at the secondary though. I mean, the pass rush is definitely an issue, but you've got T.J. Ward, who they signed, was hurt for part of the year, washed up. They got Brent Grimes. I don't know how much he's got left in the tank. I mean, they have to retool their secondary too.
That's a perfect segue to my biggest second comment with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is not only Brent Grimes, but Doug Martin as well. Those are two big guys that they need to figure out walking into the next season.
I'd dip on Doug Martin. I think he has the ability, but running back is such a fluid position in the NFL that I think you can draft or sign somebody and get them to do what he's done. I just don't. I mean, I think at his best, I think he's a really good running back, but I mean, he can't stay healthy.
I would let him get cut, walk, whatever. I don't know his contract situation.
He might be up after this year, but don't quote me on that.
I know Brent Grimes is due to become a free agent, and I arguably would let him walk.
Yeah, I would.
Because I would
absolutely.
almost take a page from the Dallas playbook and go young. And that's just one way to get your talent on the defensive side better is to groom them at the youth when they're young rookies, sophomore year. Invest a high draft pick on a corner, and hand in hand, they need to address that defensive line and pass rush.
Yeah,
though.
look, if you go young and you struggle on defense, at least you're saying you're developing talent. If you've got veteran players back there and they're getting toasted, then you're screwed. I mean, you're not making any headway with development. You just have a bad defense. So definitely Tampa needs to go younger there. What's your opinion on the offense though over there?
Disappointing. It really is. They spent money on Deshaun Jackson.
He was honestly a pretty decent. He was probably their best receiver. And you know what? This is coming from a guy who had Mike Evans in 3 fantasy leagues. That guy just. I mean, there was other factors that went into it. It was the quarterback play. But I just don't think he himself had a very good year.
Yeah, it's you have Evans, you have Jackson.
O.J.
Howard, you spent a first-round pick on him. Jameis Winston's supposed to be the next it guy. It's just that offense was just, I don't know, lackluster.
Well, Jameis is supposed to be the next guy, and we've talked about Marcus Mariota and who's been developing him. You got Dirk freaking Cutter is your guy for Jameis Winston. I mean, and they're bringing him back, and it's just like, what are you doing? This guy's going to be in his 4th year. You're really hitting the point where we talk about development, blah, blah, blah. Now you're finding out what he's made of. Now you're finding out, is this guy legit? And, you know, who is developing him? Who is driving him forward? And that just isn't a good sign for me.
Bill Parcells said it the best. By the time that year, the 3rd to 4th year for a player, is all he needs to know about what you're going to turn into.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at with the Tampa Bay Bucks and Jameis
definitely.
Winston, because they need to evolve that team and be that Super Bowl team that they were, with a dominant defense and
I mean,
solid offense.
Yeah, as you said, it's a tough division, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, I mean, they should be more competitive than they are at the very least.
Here's one team that didn't have problems on defense, and that's the Carolina Panthers. They were 11-5, and you know, Cam is Cam.
Yeah, Cam is a very love-hate guy for me. He intrigues me. He's probably one of the most physically gifted players in the league, just because his build, his makeup is fascinating. I think he doesn't have any weapons outside of Greg Olsen. I mean, I like Devin Funchess, okay, but that's your number one?
That midseason trade kind of perplexed me.
I just don't think they wanted to pay Kelvin Benjamin down the road, and they said...
All right, I didn't think about it like that.
I mean, I think he was on year 3. Well, yeah, I think he's on year 3. he's roughly around the same time Jameis was. They played on the same team for the national championship. I think Kelvin is actually on year 4, so I think his option year is next year. So I think they didn't want to pay him, which is all well and good, I guess, but you couldn't wait to the offseason. I mean, you were in a playoff push there, and you traded your number 1 receiver.
Yeah, I would still call it a successful season. I mean, 3 teams came out of that division.
Yeah.
Walking into next year, try and snag a left tackle. I know that they need a left tackle over there. And pay attention to Andrew Norwell. He could be a priority because of free agency. So that's another position to keep an eye on. You already touched upon wide receiver. It's just they have Cam. They have... oh, my God. Oh, Christian McCaffrey, the running back.
Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen, you already talked about it. But it's a very gadgety offense, so if you're going to get some offensive linemen, make sure they're athletic big men.
Yeah.
Because you know the way that they run their offense, they're going to be up-tempo and very, pulling, and you need athletic linemen for the Carolina Panthers. And they can build off of this year and continue to be successful.
I think from a personnel perspective, I think they need more work than you would think from an 11-5 team. I think you were saying their offense especially, they need more weapons there. I mean, I think the last 2 teams in that division, the Saints and the Falcons, I think everybody needs personnel improvements, but I think really they have a lot better talent on their team, especially at the skill positions, than Carolina does. I mean, I just think if you look at that team, I mean, how are they 11-5 with the receivers they had? It's crazy.
McCaffrey,
that's true. No, he's good. I like him. I mean, do I think he should have been the second running back off the board with what was there? Not necessarily, but I mean, I'm not denying he's very talented.
This year for the Carolina Panthers, they really built on the run game, and they really built on Cam and getting McCaffrey into the open space. They built on what they knew they were successful at.
Yeah, absolutely.
A team that turned to be a more overall balanced team this year was the 10-6 Atlanta Falcons. Build this in this offseason, build off that balanced team, and keep building that young defense. They could choose to let Datari Poe walk, maybe spend the money elsewhere. But as a whole, this team was fun to watch this year. It's always fun to watch Julio and Matt Ryan.
No,
though.
Definitely. I think Atlanta, their own worst enemy is Steve Sarkisian. I said it on previous editions. I don't know why they brought him back. He doesn't gel with Matt Ryan. He doesn't work with what they have. I think that's their biggest issue. It isn't even personnel. I mean, like I said, every team can make improvements in personnel, but I think their biggest issue is coaching. I think Sark is a very bad fit for them, and I don't know why they're keeping him around.
Yeah, they've shown flashes this past year that they can run the ball successfully, and then they just deviate from it possession after possession. It was weird to see because the year prior you had the NFL MVP in Matt Ryan, and then this year they have success running the ball, but then they're like, no, we're not going to run the ball no more. We're just going to throw the ball now, and I don't know.
Look, I said it before. I mean, Matty Ice was bound to have a down year this year just because MVP season, you're not going to live up to that necessarily. But, I mean, he just had issues this year, and I don't even think it was him. I just think it was disconnect with the coordinator. So that's what it comes down to for me with the Falcons. I love that team. I think that defense really grew into itself this year. A lot of young talent over there. I just think their coaching staff is their own worst enemy.
Yeah. Now you have the sweet New Orleans Saints, who are 11-5, and they took the NFL by storm this year. They were a team that kind of came out of nowhere, and I say that like that.
No, I mean, for me personally, I mean, I really thought going into the year, especially to start off 0-2, I thought Sean Payton was going to get fired. I thought Drew Brees, I thought they were going to blow everything up, and I thought Brees was going to end up playing elsewhere next year. Really, that's what I thought, because they just didn't look good, and they had a great draft this past year.
Great draft.
One of the best drafts I've seen from a team in recent memory. I mean, they address needs. They have a young core there, and outside of Drew Brees, who's obviously a very successful veteran, I mean, they have a lot of intriguing young talent there, which I think is good to counterbalance that gunslinger there in Brees.
because of this draft class, I would say they're built for today and for future success.
I think New Orleans, for me, is probably my best young team in the league right now, which is funny to say, like I said, with Drew Brees at your quarterback. But like you said, they're built for the future, but they can win now. That two-headed running back combination is outstanding. Michael Thomas is awesome to watch. I love watching Michael Thomas.
Great. But I think they should try and find a number 2 because I think the whole wide receiver corps besides him could use an upgrade.
I mean, I think what they did essentially is they traded Brandon Cooks to New England, and they essentially replaced him with Ted Ginn. That's what they did. Now,
good point. He finally learned how to catch.
Yeah, which is always key when you're wide receiver, I've learned. I mean, I think Brandon Coleman's okay. Willie Snead really was a non-factor this year.
But imagine Ted as a slot receiver, or if you can find someone who can burn people in the slot.
Well, the thing with Ted, can you teach the old dog new tricks? He's always been a downfield threat, but he's never really, like you said, been an intermediate pass catcher. So that's a question mark. But I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I mean, if you want to dump Ginn, or I don't know if Snead's up or not over there in receivers, if you want to let somebody like that go, and like I like Brandon Coleman, I think he's a good receiver. Josh Hill emerged as a good tight end. Yeah, if you want to go out and try to get a better number 2, I'm all for it. I don't know. I mean, I think Ted Ginn serves a purpose for them that they've had in recent years, which is a down the field threat.
Drew has gone on record saying that he will be back for next year.
Yeah.
So that's good news. And I say that comment because I feel for future success, I think similar to the New York Giants, they need to find an eventual replacement for Drew. And I think if you can grab I'm not saying go grab a young quarterback in the first, second round, but if you can grab a young quarterback and have him learn behind Drew Brees, that's huge.
Yeah. You have to know how much Brees has left in the tank, and we don't know. Only he knows, and possibly people in the organization. Say he has 3 to 4 years left. Yeah, if you get a guy now and you can develop them like you're saying, sure, then you are in a good place where you can have continuity of power. You can have a successor in place. It's just easier said than done. So that's definitely a good point going forward. I'm interested to see how that plays out for him.
Closing out the Saints and this whole division as a whole, there's one storyline to keep an eye out if you're a New Orleans Saints fan, is that in Mark Ingram's contract, there's a clause to void out 2018.
Would you if you were him? I mean, I think he fits well there.
Yeah, it's tough because everybody wants to be the guy. And with Alvin Kamara, it's just, can they replicate what they did this year, next year?
Yeah. I think the thing with Ingram, I think he has to ask himself, I don't know how much money he makes off the top of my head.
Me neither. I know this is his second contract, so he has the opportunity,
right,
especially as a running back, to at least have the ability to get a third contract.
Well, exactly.
And
that's the question he has to ask himself, is the possibility of making more money, which I think he could make more money because of the year he had. I think he's a bell cow running back, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield, so he has a lot of value. But do you want to leave what's good? Do you want to leave that good system, the team that has utilized you better in the last few years, especially, again, best running back tandem in the league hands down this year? Do you want to leave that? I don't know. I mean, if I was him, I'd really think long and hard, and, I can't knock either decision he makes.
It was on a different... His contract had come up, but it's kind of similar to DeMarco Murray after the 2014 season. You saw the success that the Dallas Cowboys had, and yet your contract was up. This one, Mark Ingram can void it out. It's different in that nature, but you could get paid a little bit less and stay with what you know of being a consistent...
In a team that's going to be a contender.
Yes, yeah. So that's the big storyline for the New Orleans Saints that I would be paying attention to in the offseason. Now, going up north, where the Super Bowl is being hosted, is Minnesota, so we'll might as well start off with the Minnesota Vikings in the NFC North. They had a 13-3 record, and oh boy, if there was an amusement ride, they would be the carousel, because they're going to have a quarterback carousel in this offseason. They have Teddy Bridgewater, Sam Bradford, Case Keenum.
I just want to say I didn't know where you were going with that analogy, but you definitely cleaned it up real well. You finished it off. So
Yeah, thank you. But it's who do you keep? What do? You drafted Teddy in the first round. You traded a first round pick for Sam Bradford, but then lo and behold, a free agent quarterback that you signed, Case Keenum, brings you all the way to the NFC Championship.
So here's how I see it. Sam Bradford's out for me. Sam Bradford can't stay healthy. He played one game and his knee flared up. I mean, bless the dude. He's just had so many injury issues that I just think he's literal damaged goods. I don't think you even consider him. The other two, nobody knows except for Minnesota how healthy Teddy Bridgewater is. They don't know. Only him and the team doctors and the coaching staff know what shape his knee's in. I don't know when you have a non-contact injury. I don't know if you can predict if it's going to happen again. I mean, there's always obviously going to be a risk, but I mean, I don't know if his knee's adverse to that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm speculating here. So you have to sit there if you're Minnesota and you have to say, is he somebody who is, one, healthy enough to build around, and two, somebody we want to build around? And that's something they're going to have to decide. And I don't know about Case Keenum. I mean, he had a good year. He flourished under Shermer. I don't know. I guess it just depends. Can you do better than him in free agency? It's an interesting quarterback class in free agents. You know, with the Cousins deal in Washington, he's going to walk because they traded for Alex Smith. Minnesota has $57 million projected cap space. They can go after Kirk Cousins.
Holy smoke.
Yeah, and I don't know who's necessarily a free agent with that team. I don't know who needs to get paid right now. I know their defense is on a lot of low money deals right now. I think it's like rookie deals and that kind of thing. So,
but the thing is walking into next year, there's not many, if any, starting positions on the defensive side. So for me, don't forget, they had the NFL leading rusher go down with an injury in Delvin Cook. And then they had McKinnon, who's already going on record. He wants to be the guy. So you know McKinnon's going to be leaving. They signed Murray to a multi-year deal.
And he's on the cheap, so that's not a bad contract for you.
So walking into next year, besides this whole quarterback conundrum, they were unprecedentedly. They started 5 brand new offensive linemen walking from 16 to 17. From 17 to 18, I would almost invest more in the offensive line walking into next year because you know you have Delvin Cook and Latavius Murray coming. You have a great duo in Adam Thielen and oh my God,
Stephon Diggs.
Sorry, people. I made an outstanding play. How can I forget about him?
Right.
So.
And I like Kyle Rudolph
at tight end. So for me, for the only positions that really need to be addressed for these is offensive line.
Yeah, and I think, talking about running back, I think you have to ask yourself, is Dalvin Cook going to be able to be what he was just coming off the knee injury? I'm not saying long term. I'm saying next year. It's always that residual from the knee injury. It really takes 2 years to get back to cutting the way you are and being that kind of player. And Dalvin Cook was a good pass catcher in college, so he can be that guy. I just don't know if you want to bring in a good pass catcher next year to kind of just take the load off him, because you don't want to get somebody coming off that kind of injury, and you want him with the talent he has to run the ball, but I don't know if you want to necessarily work him to death next year. I think you want to, especially at the beginning, you kind of ease him in. So it's definitely questions they have to answer.
The one thing I love about Dalvin Cook, though, is that he's an all-3 down back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but it's good they have Latavius Murray as insurance for next year.
You got Green Bay also coming off a 7-9 record with no Aaron Rodgers for most of the year. They got so much money wrapped up in wide receivers.
Yeah. Well, I think Cobb's gonna walk. Cobb is up. I think he's gone. They just re-signed Adams. Nelson is on the books, but he's getting up there in age. So you don't know how many years he's got left. I mean, they are very good, I will say, as an organization in getting very rough wide receivers, very raw wide receivers, I should say, and kind of molding them into good players.
Well, it's easy when you have a great quarterback, Aaron Rodgers.
Well, definitely. And so I think they can afford to probably go in a later round, or, you know, picking up a low-key guy and kind of developing them as their third wide receiver. That defense is a mess, though.
Yeah, if I'm Green Bay this offseason, I'm going to invest in the defensive side of the ball, because to go further with what you were saying with Aaron Rodgers, because he's so good, he can make that offense run with minimal talent, kind of like a Tom Brady. I mean, Brady has awesome weapons over there, but Aaron Rodgers, he can just make gold out of bronze. It's crazy, the quarterback
No, absolutely.
work he does.
Yeah.
But they added Kevin King in the 2017 draft. Keep building that defense.
Yeah, they just need to build it. They also have to look to see if there's fat to trim. I mean, what is Clay Matthews at this point? Clay Matthews isn't nearly the player he was, and he's making a lot of money.
Yeah.
You have to really, I mean, that's the game. You have to understand what you're getting out of people, and if their paycheck is worthy of their production. I don't think Clay Matthews is nearly near that.
And the thing with him is that every year they change him up. One year he's an outside linebacker pass rusher. The next year he's an inside backer. The next year he's an outside linebacker, but coverage.
And he made his money rushing the passer. So, but I think that's because they've had deficiencies in the middle of the defense. They haven't had guys that could play the middle of the field that they trusted. So, again, that's about getting talent in there that can play at that level that you're comfortable moving him back outside if you choose to keep him.
Another team that needs pass rushers is the 9-7 Detroit Lions. They have Ziggy Ansah coming potentially as a free agent. They just need a whole new front seven. They need a edge rusher, probably two.
What's interesting, I mean, they're going to hire Matt Patricia. That's pretty much that is pretty much set in stone after everything's said and done, the Super Bowl. He's the guy. So you have him. He's a defensive mind. Always interesting to see how those Belichick coaches do on their own. But, I mean, the point is they need help on defense. They're going to have Jim Bob Cooter on the offensive side. He and Matt Stafford work very well, unlike Sarkisian and Matt Ryan. You know, they have a chemistry there in Detroit. So you have good talent there. I think the only thing with them is that they haven't had a 100-yard rusher in so long.
4 years. I have the note right here.
There we go.
Because I was astounded. I was watching the Detroit Lion game this past year.
And they kept bringing it up because it's ridiculous, man.
Ridiculous. That's an understatement, because 4 years without a 100-yard rusher? I can't even how do you not have a 100-yard rusher in 4 years worth of games?
Well, I think you got to look at what they have at running back. I mean, I like Amir Abdullah as a pass catcher. I feel like him and Theo Riddick are kind of similar players, though. I don't think they're really good between the tackle runners. And the thing is you're not going to run for 100 yards running stretch plays and tall sweeps. I mean, you're going to have to go between the tackles at some point. So, and you also have to ask what talent you have on the offensive line. You have to ask, can you run the ball between the tackles? So, questions they have to answer. I think that they're very much like the New York Giants in that department, where it's the personnel at running back, and also you have to ask, is it the offensive line too?
The last team in the NFC North is the Chicago Bears. They were 5-11 this past year. There's probably just one thing I would build upon the Chicago Bears and Mitchell Trubisky is that they need a wide receiver over there.
Oh, I know.
They need a WR1.
Do they even have like wide receivers there?
I don't even know if they have a WR2.
Or I don't know, man. I'm thinking like a 3. Yeah, I'm really interested to see what Matt Nagy does over there. New head coach coming from the Andy Reid system. He was very creative with Reid there, running KC's offense this past season. Put Alex Smith as the highest-rated passer in the NFL, and that's what Trubisky needs. That's what I mean when I talk about a young coach and an innovator. That's what a young quarterback needs. They don't need Dirk Cutter or Mike Mularkey. They need somebody like Nagy or Sean McVay with a fresh mind and somebody who's going to play to their strengths. But, yeah, they need personnel at wide receiver.
Their defense is fine. I mean, they play in a very pass-happy division with Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit.
They probably could use some boost in the secondary, but their front seven's actually pretty good.
Yes, and, it's one of those things, what came first, chicken or the egg, with the pass rush in the front seven. But the big thing with Chicago is that they needed that offensive side for weapons. They need a WR1. They have two good running backs in Howard and Cohen. C-O-O?
Yeah, it's Cohen.
Cohen? All right, thank you. They have good running backs, so if they can just build upon Mitchell and give him some receivers, they could make a run.
And you don't know what's going on with Zach Miller. I don't know if Zach Miller's going to play again. I don't know if he's retiring. He had that gruesome leg injury. He almost lost his leg.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And they really just added insult to that injury because they took away his touchdown for like a ridiculous reason. Don't let me get into the NFL catch rule. But anyways, from a personnel standpoint, I don't know what's happening with him. He's up there in age. I don't know if he's officially said anything. I know he's obviously been rehabbing it, and he seems to be coming along all right. But, that was basically their number one target there on the offensive side throwing the ball. So if you're going to lose him or if he's not going to be 100%, I mean, they need receivers. I mean, no matter what. So
that's why it's kind of simplistic with the Chicago Bears because it's just so obvious. It's just they need a WR1 since they lost Alshon.
You drafted the quarterback. You traded up to draft the quarterback. You believe in the guy. So no matter what, good or bad, he's your guy for the next 4 or 5 years. So yeah, you have to give him pieces now. I really didn't judge Trubisky on his production this year because I'm like, this guy's playing with chicken shit. Like, I mean, what's he dealing with? So
a similar quarterback in that we're gonna travel to the West now is the San Francisco 49ers.
My boy Jimmy G.
6-10 record. They did a midseason trade with Jimmy Garoppolo. I like it. Now with the free agency coming in the new year, they need to find a good wide receiver one. They have Pierre Garçon. He has hands like glue, but he's a true number 2 if you get a number 1.
And Marquise Goodwin's a nice guy over there, but a guy I would pursue heavily for them is Jarvis Landry. I think having a guy that can go over the middle like that is a possession receiver because Goodwin and Landry, and Garçon can both stretch the field. They're both down the field guys. We're talking like 10, 15-yard ins and that kind of thing. Landry is he's a 100 catch guarantee with a good quarterback, and even with subpar quarterbacks he's had in Miami.
Yeah, I personally love Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's a great asset to have.
He could come right in and make this team into a playoff contender because you can always add an offensive lineman or whatnot. But besides that wide receiver one, if they got Jarvis Landry with Pierre Garçon, that offense is clicking with Carlos Hyde. And then let's say you invest on the defensive side. I could see them going with a corner. They need someone to help out. I'm going to probably screw this name up, but Akello Witherspoon, corner.
Yep.
Rookie. That could help out that team as a whole and make them into a playoff contender, especially in this tough division.
Yeah, and I think they drafted Reuben Foster in the middle, good solid linebacker. They got Solomon Thomas on the line, and they have I'm drawing a blank on a defensive tackle there, but they have a very talented defensive tackle as well in San Fran. So their front's good, and they've got a good linebacker there. So they have some talent on defense. It's just putting it all together, like you're saying, and getting some more talent. They got so much cap room. They have like over $100 million in cap room. You pay Jimmy his $20 million or whatever. You still have so much money to play with.
Oh yeah, that's why it's similar to Chicago, where some more offensive firepower, and they could be a franchise to watch. Now, one franchise to not really watch because they're in rebuild mode would be the Arizona Cardinals. They finished 8-8. They need everything. Well, this team will be kept short and sweet because this team needs everything.
I like their defense. I think they have talent on defense. Chandler Jones has been sneaky good for them since he got traded to Arizona. I mean, you got Peterson, you got the Honey Badger over there. I think they have some talent on that side of the ball. The problem is they don't have any cap room. They don't. They are in a very tight situation. Schefter projects they're going to have $12 million in cap. They have a guy who could use Kirk Cousins. They don't have a quarterback.
Nope.
But they're not going to be able to afford him. And the problem is they're paying guys because they're paying Peterson, they're paying Honey Badger, they're paying Chandler Jones, they're paying Larry Fitzgerald. They've got so much money tied up over there with guys. And not that they're not talented, but it's like you're missing. And I was not sold on Carson Palmer the last 2 years anyways. I thought he was kind of done and he retired for a variety of reasons. But, yeah, man, I mean, they're kind of screwed. They, especially in that division, they're gonna really take a beating because they get their work cut out for them.
Yeah, they got several pressing needs, and they have a great running back in DJ. So I can always say, throw in some more offensive line. for some reinforcement help. But it's another offensive weapon that they need is a WR2 because you have Fitzgerald nearing the end of his career. So it's if you draft a young quarterback, why not draft a young receiver to help mature with? It's just
Well, I believe John Brown's also a free agent. I think.
yes, that's yeah.
So there's a need there. I mean, Jerron Brown's what he is. J.J. Nelson, I mean, so you're looking at you're gonna need a number 2 anyways. So yeah, I mean, to your point, they're so middle of the road with their pick. I mean, I don't know if what are they gonna have to do, trade up to get a quarterback? I mean, there's so many intriguing prospects in this draft, and people have got them scattered all over the board
because they need so much.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. They're just in a weird place. I mean, I was a Bruce Arians fan. I mean, there's a lot of people I like on that roster, but no, you really laid it out for me and like made me realize that they're in a hole and they're gonna have to.
That's what we're doing. State of the NFC.
Yeah, man, and their state is not so great.
2 more teams left in this division. The last division we're going over, it's Seattle Seahawks. They were 9-7 this year. We know about Seattle. It's the Russell Wilson show this past year. He was unbelievable. If they were to make it to the playoffs, I could see him being the NFL MVP because of it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, boost up that offensive line and gain some depth in the defense. They showed their weakness when they had to go to their depth for during the season when they lost Richard Sherman and Chancellor, and it was just injury upon injury, and the offense was just Russell Wilson. That's it.
They have decisions to make. They have so much money tied up on their defense. I think they're going to get rid of Jimmy Graham because Jimmy Graham's never fit there. It's never really worked. He's had his moments. He's had his games, whatnot. But he's making a lot of money. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got so much money tied up over there. I mean, you got to decide. You can't keep Chancellor, Thomas, Sherman, Bennett, Wagner. You can't. I mean, the bottom line is, like you said, the Russell Wilson show needs some more supporting cast. Like they can't do what they did this year. The guy is going to get himself killed behind that offensive line, and plus, outside of Doug Baldwin, their receivers are
Yeah, it's not realistic, but just go offensive lineman all 7 rounds of the draft. You're bound to hit a superstar in one of those because you had Russell running for his life. I mean,
and
he could throw the ball without being a hand in the face.
They traded for Dwayne Brown, and
it helps short term.
Yeah, but like he's another guy. He needs to get paid. So like,
all right.
Yeah, that was the thing. I'm not sure if it's this year or next year, but he was in a contract dispute with Houston. That's why they traded him. So, again, you don't have any money. I mean, I don't know their exact cap number, but come on. They're paying all those guys on defense. They're paying Russell. They can't have that much. And that's the thing is that they have a lot of problem areas just with depth and just pragmatism. I mean, you need to make decisions on both sides of the ball to help improve your football team, and you can't do that with the money you're doling out right now. So, tough decisions to make over there.
Last but not least is the NFC West division winning Los Angeles Rams with 11-5 record. And boy, did they come from the basement and rise to the penthouse, huh?
Yeah. The Rams are a team that, I mean, I love watching them play. I mean, they're exciting. They've got a lot of young talent. I think, for me, it's really difficult to pinpoint specific needs. I mean, they have solid players on both sides of the ball. I think for me, it's maybe you're looking at the receivers. I mean, Sammy Watkins is up. Do you want to keep him? He didn't really wow me. I like Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. So if you let him walk, you're going to have to find a guy to replace Watkins, which I honestly think isn't that hard to do. I think you can find
he was non-existent some parts of the year.
Yeah, he really doesn't do anything for me. Another outstanding Buffalo Bills draft pick right there. But anyways, you got that. I mean, defensively, I know they struggled to stop the run, but I mean, you've got good players there. Maybe you look at your linebackers.
I'd go corner.
Yeah, I can see that too.
They have Tremaine Johnson, who's been kind of on that trade block for the past 2 free agent years, 2015 to 2016.
Yeah,
he was on that trade block.
Well, they traded for Roby Coleman with the Bills as well, and he was all right. But yeah, no, they could definitely use help
because their front seven. Everyone knows about Aaron Donald in that front seven. So if you could grab a nice stud as a corner, or maybe even a safety, because Mark Barron, they moved him at linebacker, and he's due for a big cap hit, so he's probably going to be out. So maybe that falls into play with your linebacker situation.
I think for me, it's kind of similar to the Falcons for me. I mean, they definitely have personnel. You just went over moves that they could and should make. So that's definitely there. For me, for the Rams, it's just the fact they have to play a tougher schedule next year. They're in the same boat, I think, with the Jaguars. I can see them. I'm not saying they're going to finish 6-10, 7-9, but I can see them taking a step back record-wise just because they're going to play at the top of the conference. They're going to be playing the cream of the crop. Same thing with the Jaguars. You're not going to be playing, if you're Jacksonville, the 31st best offensive schedule in the league. You're not going to be going against easy teams like that. You're going to be going against New England, Kansas City, Pittsburgh. Similarly, the Rams are going to be going against the Saints, the Vikings, and the Eagles.
And that's what makes the state of the NFC so different than the state of the AFC, is because you have two teams in the AFC with Pittsburgh and New England who's been playing the same type of schedule for years, and they've come out on top for over years.
Yep.
Where the NFC side, a little fun fact, only one team from last year came to the playoffs, and that was your NFC team representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Tongue twister there. Which was the Atlanta Falcons.
And they were a 6 seed.
Right. So there's so much shuffling of the playoff deck out of the NFC side. It's just these teams who have success struggle the year after because they have to play what their record says they're going to play for scheduling. So the Rams are going to fall in place like that, and who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
We're going to have probably, the way that history tells us, 5 new NFC playoff teams.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. And I mean, you talk about the state of the AFC versus the NFC to kind of wrap everything up. Man, we just talked almost 40 minutes about the NFC because it's intriguing as hell. I mean, there's so many moving pieces. I mean, the AFC, the point I was trying to drive home is that the AFC is a mess. And not to take away credit for the New England Patriots because they've been tremendous in their run, but they definitely play in a weaker conference. I mean, if they played in the NFC, I'm sure they would have made a number of Super Bowls, but they wouldn't have been in a conference championship every year. The NFC is so much more dynamic and intriguing that, it's going to be a fun offseason. So, I mean, that's all I've got. I thought we really kind of just gave a cursory glance to every team, and I look forward to the offseason.
We gave a good review of the 2017 NFL year as a whole.
Yeah, and we did it without politicians around us clapping after every sentence, which, I can always add in post, I suppose, but, it wouldn't flow very well. But, yeah, I think that's all we got. I just appreciate everybody listening in. Hope you enjoyed some of the analysis with teams and stories around the league. And be sure to tune in. We're going to be around during the offseason, talking about the draft, free agency, and moves teams are making. So definitely stay tuned and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll be sure to keep you up to date with the goings on in the NFL. All right, have a good one.